Hello there, I'm Kingdom Gambit, and today I will be reviewing a chess game for you today. I played with the black pieces. It was a pretty fun game. Some clever tactics were found, and chess.com rated me 1950. My current rating, though, is 1274, and my opponent begins with the move e4, opening with the king's pawn, usually controls the center, as well as opens up the light squared bishop and queen, often leading to sharp games. I begin with this move g6, and he takes full control of the center and opens up for development with his dark squared bishop. I then fianchetto my bishop, and he develops his dark squared bishop as well, increases the influence in the center as well. And I play this move d6. He then develops his bishop, and I am threatening tactically to win a pawn here. As you can see, my knight is hitting this d4 pawn as well as my bishop. And let's see how my opponent responds. He blocks with the knight, and I pin him. And the tactic is still there to be found. He does nothing about it. He tries to kick my piece, and he ends up losing a pawn here from me taking with my bishop, him taking back with his queen, and me taking with my knight. He then moves his queen backwards, and I strike a pawn move, trying to start controlling some key squares in the center. He develops his knight, and computer did not like this move. I see. Maybe playing this move with his knight. I think that might look pretty good for him. I'm not sure, but the computer really doesn't like this move. He blunders here, and I pin his knight. It's an inaccuracy by the computer as well. And I saw this move coming, but I thought I had a clever response to it. I thought that taking with my knight for the pawn would be a good idea, because as you can see, my queen and my bishop are both hitting this on the long diagonal. In this opening, the modern defense, it's very good for tactics, especially when you're looking on the long diagonal, maybe taking the rook, or when the knight comes here and there's a pawn pushed. There's very good chances that you'll be able to find a tactic if you play this opening and you're looking for them. He, in this position, decides, oh, I can just attack the queen. The knight's hit. It feels like there's a lot of pieces hanging in this position, and there's one move that is the only way to keep my advantage, which is very high at this point. I take. He has to take with the queen because he can't take with his king. And I take with my knight. He takes back with his king. I castle here, and he threatens to win this pawn if I ever move my king. I don't love the pressure there. And I decide to kick away the knight first. Moves it back. And knight e7 is actually best in this position. Okay. And he makes this mistake right here. I finally get to relieve that pressure that he's putting on b7, and I develop my pawn forward. He moves backwards, and this was a really good tactic that I found. So I kick his knight. I kick his bishop. He has to move it back. The best move probably would have been just to take. And my next tactic that I play is just sliding my pawn one square forward, because here, because the bishop is attacking it, protecting it, I should say, I'm checking the king, and I'm threatening to win the knight, and there's no way to save the knight now. So he moves the king back, or I should say forward. I take the knight, he moves his king, and I start trying to break open the center here. I see a weak king. He pushes forward, just losing a pawn here. And he says, well, at least I'm going to win back this pawn. I finally develop my knight, and he takes with his rook. I bring my knight to the center here, threatening to win a pawn, a fork here as well, winning the rook. He moves his rook, but there was a double purpose to this move, and I end up winning the pawn because my knight and my bishop were hitting the square. He then pins my bishop. No big deal, I just use a pawn to guard it. He kicks my knight, and I break the pawn with my bishop. Though my knight is hanging in this position, I am checking the king, and the king cannot go to any of these three squares because of my bishop and my pawn covering these. So he slides out of the way. I move my king, just getting out of the pin, and he wants to break this pawn off because he would be able to capture my bishop at that point. The knight would also be hanging. I reinforce the pawn, he takes, as I take back, and he checks the king. I go forward because I really don't see any chances of him checkmating me. I don't think that getting my king out at this point is going to be dangerous in any way. And in this position, I saw, where can I go where he's not going to be able to check me? Right in the opening, and the computer strangely gives this an excellent move. He pushes his pawn, and I slide out of the way, pushes his pawn again, and I slide out of the way. All right, and he checked me one more time, but this is the last check. And I'm actually safer than I was before, so not so good on his part, doing all of those pointless checks to push his pawns forward when it was only putting my king in a better position. He plays this move. I see that he's just attacking the knight, but I'm not sure why he really plays this move. Around the lower levels of chess, even where I'm at, playing 1250s and 1300s, a lot of people make moves that they say, oh, I attack knight. They don't think about, well, if I push my pawn forward, your rook is under attack. And what ends up happening is I push my pawn and he attacks the pawn. But in this position, I attack the bishop and he no longer puts up a fight. And I also considered in this position, maybe just, playing this move, and let's say he moves the bishop, and in this position, I was thinking, I can just give this up. So let's say he takes. I forget if he moves here. That would have been kind of dumb on my part. But I hope you enjoyed the game for today, and maybe you learned a thing or two. If you'd like to subscribe, I'd really appreciate that. And please have an awesome day.